Thank you for staying with us. It's a Tuesday morning, and that song by Mensa always gets me. I've been reflecting on it over the last few days. That point where he says, their hearts are ice cold. They don't care about you. I mentioned yesterday how those three things, they have eyes, but they don't see. They have hearts, but they don't feel. Minds, but they don't think. It actually reminds me, it takes me, and I'm sure my guests will remember the song, all the way to 1995. Michael Jackson, one of my favorite tracks of his. They Don't Care About Us. Yeah, it's a beautiful track. I think it was shot somewhere in Brazil. Anyway, here we kickstart. Sometimes my heart bleeds for Ghana, but one day at a time. That's how we can do it. We don't give up. We must all put our shoulder to the wheel. It will not become better in one day. Rome wasn't built in a day, they say. It's just disheartening when, we could have built up to this point by now, but thanks to some ineptitude, we're not there. I was just looking at a post from Daryl Bosu of Arusha, Ghana, and what he's saying about, yes, COP28, and our lands minister is going to be there talking, waxing lyrical, as we usually do, about forest protection and all of that. Yet we're giving mining permits for our forest reserves. Interesting scenario. But anyway, thank you. Welcome on the News Review Bout. The segment is always brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. They're offering free prostate screening if you're a man, free female fertility screening, and here's where you can locate them. Right here in Accra. Go to Spintex. They are opposite the Shell signboard. If you're in Kumasi, go to Kronom Abwehia behind the Angel Educational Complex. That's where you'll find them. If you're in Tadi, Takrady, Anaji State is where you will find them. If you come back to the Greater Accra region and you find yourself in Tema, they are located in Community 22. Then there's Techiman Hanswa and Esiama and Zima. I prefer that you give them a call. And these are the numbers on which you can reach them. 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. My name is Benjamin Akakpo, and this morning I am hosting Afe Omoni. He is former president of the Ghana Journalists Association. Good morning.
Good morning, Ben.
More and more, I've been reading a lot about Israel, Palestine, and everything in between. Yesterday, I was reading some reports, and the Israeli women especially were distressed, very upset that supposedly, when the kibbutzes were attacked, they say some women were ravaged, raped, and all of that, and that the international women's community has not been forcefully talking about that. They talk of women being dragged in the streets, others being raped so hard that their pelvic bones were broken. But at the same time, you look at the Palestinian end, and you look at the sort of carnage. You look at the children, the women. You look at the death toll. I always say that when you've seen some of these things before, your viewpoint on them is very different because you've been in the middle of carnage before. And it's so distressing every day when I have to read, because now some of the Israeli hostages are coming back now sharing their stories. Some say they were raped by Hamas. But on the other end, the death toll in Palestine is just heartbreaking. So for me, I've just been praying that, look, I know maybe it's hoping against hope with the knowledge I have of intractable conflicts, the international space, and how long this conflict has spanned. But it truly breaks my heart when I read stories from both ends. There's no this side or that side. It is the human side. And we're destroying, one another. Hamas has left its people in the lurch. Israel too is doing its thing, and I don't know when it's going to end. At least we have that momentary ceasefire,
Yeah.
would that it's lasted much longer? Because I just can't take it
has been
anymore.
extended for 2 more days, and pressure has been mounting on
Israel.
Netanyahu to secure the release of Israeli nationals in the region of 200. And there are even calls for his removal as prime minister.
As for the calls, they started from within because his own people felt it was a failure.
Yes.
Now the company that even comes through with the
Monumental
Iron
failure.
Dome has come through with an iron beam, which is much more efficient because it doesn't even need to use a projectile, a rocket, to counter another rocket. It uses laser technology and it's much faster. But that's not the point. The point is they feel they were let down. And so when all of this is over, he's only being retained because you can't have a leadership vacuum and now say we're going to the Knesset, which is their parliament, to now get someone else. You get it. So you stay through, but when this is said and done, Netanyahu, with the writing on the wall, will be gone. And maybe this time finally, because this is what, is it third or fourth time Benjamin Netanyahu has been there, like in and out for donkey years.
And before the Hamas's attack, it was unthinkable that they could pierce the invincible military structure of the Israelis.
The Israelis took certain things for granted.
I hear even the artificial intelligence failed them.
Yeah.
So many things failed them, and they are still holding Netanyahu to account for that monumental failure.
And I feel rightly so. Rightly so. If God forbid, some insurgents infiltrated our country and certain things happened, yes, we would hold the security establishment and Mr. President responsible. I mean, he is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. He is there to protect everybody. He controls the armed forces for a reason.
Sure. So and the ferocity of the attacks against Hamas and innocent citizens, and the obstinate determination.
The attacks may not be targeted at civilians, but in the end, the civilian casualties, it's a pile. And we're talking human beings.
And Netanyahu also wants to prove a point that after all, he can be trusted to secure Israel in the face of danger from Hamas. So the point is that the murderous madness in that region must stop. And America has a responsibility imposed by virtue of its leadership in the global arena to ensure that the ceasefire is extended, and then the guns should fall silent. The weapons should fall silent in that region, so that human lives will be spared. Because it's heart-rending that innocent children are not spared. Countless number of thousands, running into thousands of people, perishing under tragic circumstances. This is unacceptable.
And I mean, it's just unacceptable. Like I keep saying, there have been, in international, even if you look at the Geneva treaties and all of that, you can be protected, for example. I mean, we must look at all sides and be candid when we have the conversation. There have been claims by the US and Israel that, for example, the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza, the biggest, was being used as some sort of bunker, if you like.
Yeah.
And they have found, all these tunnels and
yeah.
ammunition. That also creates problems. You get it?
Sure.
I'm just torn in the middle. I'm torn in between. But where my heart bleeds is the fact that so many people are dying.
And the time has
It's
come
terrible.
to take a long and hard look.
On both sides,
both
so many
sides.
people have
On
died.
both sides.
Some of the Israelis that were kidnapped, some have suffered, others have died. Recently, I saw some children who were released. My heart just broke. Children.
Some had to be transferred to hospitals outside in Egypt and other countries. But they are dying in droves.
No, I think you're talking about the babies who had been incubated.
Yeah.
That's on the Palestinian side. I'm talking about some of the hostages, children, who are now released. It's on both sides.
both
It's,
sides,
it's
on
a
both
mess.
sides. Mm.
It's a real mess. This is a scar on the conscience of
International
everybody.
community. Yeah.
Everybody. Because on the Israeli end, there are so many casualties and there's so much pain. On the Palestinian end, so many casualties, so much pain. When will it end? That's the question.
So this is a time to find a durable solution to this crisis. And
I'm sorry I'm going on and on like this, but it's something that really troubles me. What is happening there? So now we'll stick to the script and go into the stories. But maybe I feel this differently because of what I've seen before. It's just terrible. And every day I've stopped watching TV on. I've stopped watching the images. I read. I don't like to watch anymore. It's too much for me now. Anyway, so let's get into the newspapers. So I see Billy Pounds, you say you are listening live from the United States of America. That's good to know. But for the rest of you who are trying to connect, when you go to Joy News on Facebook, then click on videos. That's where you would find the feed. I think Facebook has changed, Meta has changed its operations, so we don't get to have the normal feed like you would see it. So when you go on Joy News on Facebook, just look for videos and then you will find the news review. Mr. Money, I have the final newspaper, the Economy Times, as well. What do you have? Let's start with you.
I have the Ghanaian Times and Daily Guide.
Let's start from your end.
The banner story, Ghanaian Times, minority case against 5.5 billion cedi tax waiver for 45 countries. And the story on page 13 of the paper said the minority in parliament has kicked against government tax waivers to 45 companies amounting to $449,000, which translates into 5.5 billion cedis. According to the minority, the list of the companies penned down for the waivers has been presented to Parliament as one district, one factory companies in Ghana Investment Promotion Center Strategic Investment. A further 118 companies, the minority alleged, were being processed at the Ministries of Trade and Industry, Finance and Ghana Investment Promotion Center to be presented to Parliament for exemptions worth 7 billion cedis. The minority are raising red flag and alleging that this is another avenue for in local parlance for chop. And
is it not?
We need to strike a strategic balance.
We must sift the wheat from the chaff.
We need to sift.
The question is, do we have a lot of chaff and very little wheat?
So there's a need to, again, to scrutinize the lists and look at the benefit they will offer the nation when we can. The tax waivers are for strategic purposes.
Look,
to prop up certain industries.
Mr. Money,
and ensure that but
I read a story yesterday right here about someone who is cultivating 10,000 hectares or so, I think somewhere in Aveyime. We're saying we want to categorize importation and all of that. If they give people like that tax waivers so that they can produce more, so that eventually, I'm not saying cut it all off immediately, it won't work. But over time, we can get a certain food security, self-sufficiency, acquire the taste for our local stuff, and then over time, we get it right. But sometimes you look at entities that get tax waivers and who their friends are and who their associates are. And you don't have to be a rocket scientist to know what is going on. My question is, while I cannot paint all of them with the same brush and the same strokes, I just want to say, why are we so greedy? Why? What do we want?
You cannot rule out the greed in all this, but at the same time, I believe there must be some genuine cases.
Definitely, there will be.
Yeah, so there's a need to take a hard look, to sharpen our focus.
Do you know the problem? People will want to push willy-nilly, genuine and not so genuine and genuine altogether. We've seen too many of these cases. You remember how many times we've spoken about soul sourcing?
Soul sourcing, yeah.
How many times within this republic?
Yes.
How many times have we had conversations on soul sourcing? How many times have we had the Auditor General's report and with incredible infractions? The last I remember, when it came in per one of the reports, I think about 99+% was recoverable. Ask yourself, is it 15 or 17+ billion? I dare anyone, let's check how much of that money has been recovered.
And it's interesting that a year in, year out, the Auditor General identifies people whose acts or actions or inactions inflict colossal losses on the state, and then this provision to ensure that the offending people pay for their misdeeds. What has happened to this provision?
Yeah, surcharging and the rest.
Surcharging and all that.
I guess the only person we really saw, we've seen a little bit from this current Auditor General after a lot of talk. The only person we really saw push the law, not to its limits, but to some extent, was Daniel Domelevo, and we know how he exited.
Again, politics.
It's
politics
shameful.
to the better part of this nation, and so let's see how it goes. And the 24-hour economy continues to generate controversy and back and forth.
What do you think about it? I've had time to expatiate on that matter Friday, yesterday. Today we continue with it, actually. What do you think about it?
I've listened to, and every story has two or more sides. Every issue has two or more sides. And certainly, I've listened to both sides. The ruling government, notably the flag bearer of the NPP, His Excellency Dr. Baumia, ravishing the 24-hour economy proposal with the explanation that it is already in existence. But I've also listened to experts who are touting this proposal as a game changer. And even though certain companies are running 24 hours a day, there's a need to deepen this culture of 24 hours so that that system can spin more jobs for the team unemployed in this country. So we should not throw it away altogether just because it's coming from a certain political party. So this is a time to harvest more ideas to ensure that should and if His Excellency former President Mahama, tilts their skills in the next election, the policy will inure to the benefit of all Ghanaians. So it's good to debate the issue dispassionately, and politics should be as much as possible be relegated to a background in all this conversation, so that the national interest, the supreme national interest, should dominate this discussion. So this might be.
Well, only time will tell. I've spent a lot of time talking about this, so I'll not bore anyone with too much talk on that. But if you look at the vibrant energies we have in the youth, another aspect of our national life that breaks my heart, every day I go round, you see the number of people, and the surprising thing is sometimes you speak to them. I like talking to people a lot because it gives me a feel of what is going on.
It's good too.
I speak to trotro drivers, taxi drivers, the sugarcane seller, the barber at the barber shop, like just to gauge what is going on. And it's heartbreaking sometimes because you see, it's not to say those are demeaning jobs, because that's how I know someone who has been selling coconuts for decades now. Now he sells somewhere in Roman Ridge with all the whatever, and he's built houses, not a house, houses out of that. So you don't look down on anything.
Form started business by selling on the streets as a student at Edisada College.
Yes, he's told that story. But my point is, sometimes when you look at how well schooled some people are, and how they've not been able to find anything suitable, because there's unemployment and there's underemployment. Underemployment implying that you studied accounting, for example, but you're doing something completely unrelated. And there's too much of that.
Exactly. Job availability.
In the system. And you ask yourself, for a country that wants to develop, well, we have the vibrant energies. The projections are that after 2050, I mean, our youth population is going to balloon even further. With all those vibrant energies, what if you have energy and you don't put it to use? You know the saying, an idle hand is the devil's workshop.
Sure.
So where do they channel their energy? That's something to think about. So for me, if more jobs, definitely, if you have a 3-shift system, someone somewhere is going to get a job.
Sure.
Definitely.
Sure.
But the devil is in the implementation.
Yeah.
Just like free SHS.
Yeah.
The devil is in the implementation. But is it a good idea? Absolutely, I think so.
I think it's a good idea, but not a perfect idea so far.
No.
So there's a need to look at all sides.
In fact, it's not been perfect anyway. It's not been perfect in Singapore. I mean, they have streamlined systems, but nowhere can you say it's perfect. Not in Seoul, not in Singapore, not in Tokyo, not in Sydney, not in London, nowhere. But can it be done? Can it add?
Yeah, so
if you look at some of the
efficiency.
numbers in terms of, I think Sydney, how many years ago, it added in 1 year about 234,000 jobs. In some places, it's adding billions of pounds. So is it viable? We're going to the IMF for money. Is it viable? That's the question on the table. But today, later on, I know he's your friend. Austin Game will be joining me
Austin Game
for a conversation on that. Yeah. So, yeah. Okay, so let me quickly do these papers and then we shall make tracks. The final newspaper, Access Bank Ghana records strong financial growth in third quarter of 2023. Court quashes OSP's report implicating Colonel Damwa Eduche in La Bianca case. We forget very soon, right? Do you remember that case? Well, 5-year plan for food self-reliant. Okay, so the final newspaper, sometimes you guys make me, and other papers, 5-year plan. By the way, it shouldn't be 5 years. The GJ, former president, is here. It'll be so. 5-year. Grammatical noise. And plan for food what is self-reliant? Self-reliance. Achievable. Dr. Champong rallies public support for initiative. I cringe sometimes when I read stories. Sometimes I edit stories while reading them. It's sad, but what are we putting out there for the young ones who don't know any better? Ghana's education among the best in Africa. That's according to Dr. Violet Makuku. When I see these things, I always have but it's okay. I'll read that story. Osman Musa wins most respected construction CEO award. When I talk about education, even at the university level, when you go to some of our universities, in fact, even let's talk about the pedagogy. Let's move away from that. It's what they produce. So they go to different outfits, right? To intern and the rest. Senior, I'm sure you're fully aware. Our university students, not to talk of SHS. I rest my case. But
because of Ghana threatened to sack.
Oh yeah, they do that every year.
Non-performing students, and
they do that every year. But sometimes I get afraid when you speak to some of these ones that are coming out of university. I get afraid because when some of us came out of university, graduated, if you assess, of course, Benjamin today was not Benjamin how many years ago when I left, but the thinking, the capacity. But at the same time, you also meet some of them. I remember there was a conversation we had after the MPP presidential primary. And there was this lady who spoke, and then another gentleman. You can tell they are deep thinkers, but how many of those do we have?
Yeah.
There seems to be a paucity of that quality, even with our pedagogy. So it is rote learning. But Dr. Makuku, the Harmonization of African Higher Education Quality Assurance and Accreditation Initiative Project Officer at the Association of African Universities, Dr. Violet Makuku, has announced that Ghana stands tall when it comes to educational development in Africa. This year attributed to the giant strides the nation keeps making in the areas of science, technology, engineering and mathematics, as well as technical and vocational education and training education. And then I ask myself, okay, so STEM, the education minister has taken that as a project. Yeah. I give him thumbs up for that. He has this engineering, I think he's sponsoring a number of engineering students. Thumbs up for that. The TVET thing, the boss, CTVET, doing a fantastic job. But in the end, What are the results? I read this quote the other day in the Daily Graphic. It's not about the idea, it's about the results it yields. Yeah. So I always say, if I come and sit here and I don't deliver, over time, what will happen? Someone will take over. It's as simple as that. It's a natural order. Natural. If you don't deliver,
sure.
This is a huge platform. You can't come here and not deliver. So why do we accept that from other areas of national life? That's the question. But let me quickly do this one and then let you wrap up with the next paper. Court quashes OSP's report implicating Colonel Damwa Eduche in LaBianca case. And Accra High Court has quashed adverse findings in the report of the Office of the Special Prosecutor that accused two former Ghana Revenue Authority commissioners of wrongdoing on August 3, 2022 in the famous LaBianca case. Colonel Kwejo Damwa, a former commissioner of the GRA Customs Division, and Joseph Eduche, a former deputy commissioner of the GRA Customs Division, were allegedly accused of using their positions to grant favorable tax treatment to LaBianca Company, a frozen food firm owned by Jacqueline Bua Asoma Hene, a Council of State member. The two commissioners last year dragged the OSP to court, contending that the OSP's report had caused damage to their reputation and same had no merit. The court concluded that the OSP is not a court of competent jurisdiction or a commission of inquiry to make adverse findings. This whole OSP, powers he has, powers he doesn't have, and it's quite a hodgepodge for me, but let's leave the story there. I don't know whether the office is really serving its purpose. I see Kisi, and don't get me wrong, Kisi Ejabeng, I see him doing, he's my former lecturer in criminal law. I see him doing fantastic work, actually. I actually didn't expect him to do this much. I just felt that maybe the system would.
Obstacles are formidable.
Not just logistical, not just human resource, but other obstacles. So sometimes I ask myself, is the office even worth it?
I think the answer is yes. The answer is yes. And
since its inception, what really has it yielded? Deliverables.
Under Matiam,
in fighting
corruption.
corruption.
Much, but in the case of Cecilia Dapa, at least the OSP came out to demonstrate that
But the Dapa thing was already in the ongoing when. But I get the point.
Yeah, but at least he mustered some courage to take on a minister of state and something which
we must give him his flowers for that.
Yeah, sure, because it looked like an oddity because. Ministers of state were shielded by officialdom. But for the first time in the history of this country, we see the bravery, the audacity of the ASP taking on the Minister of State and against all odds, against certain roadblocks, political roadblocks, even from the presidency. And so as I said, we need to give the thumbs up for that audacity.
Shall we?
I think
we have just about a minute and a half.
Oh, okay. Ghanaian Times also has a front page story quoting the Agric Minister saying that Ghana will be self-sufficient in food production in the next 5 years. It is unthinkable. It's an indictment on our sense of responsibility for failing as a nation to produce in adequate quantity the food we consume, to the extent that we have to import all kinds of unnecessary items, which also exert more pressure on the struggling currency. So we need to match his promise against his action to ensure that really we are full self-sufficient even before the next 5 years, because we have no excuse. We have the land in abundance.
Do you know what is interesting? While we contemplate all of these things, we don't even know when the next, and yes, we overflogged COVID-19 and the Russo-Ukrainian war. We overflogged them. We pretended they had turned our world upside down.
Yeah.
We made them our fall guys.
Yeah.
That's the term, fall guys. We passed the buck on them. But even as we do all of this and plan and everything, we don't even know when the next fall armyworm threat could come, when the next global pandemic could hit, when something could happen that could lead to food scarcity God forbid that happening, where would we be?
There's a need, this reinforces the need for us to also have, at every point in time, have more than enough, both for local consumption and for exports.
I will wrap with Economy Times. ISA raises concern on high food import reliance amidst suspension of new food import restrictive LI. Federation of Labour supports 24/7 economy proposal. That's the Ghana Federation of Labour. And interestingly, if you listen to what they said, the head says, in the 1970s up to the early 90s, a three-shift system operated in manufacturing industries in the country, which created employment for thousands of workers. That is Mr. Abraham Kumson, GFL Secretary General, stated in a statement copied to the Ghana News Agency on the proposal by former President Mahama. And then MTN hikes prices on all products and services from this week, and that has to do with, there have been some, they are being compelled, basically, for market competitiveness to hike their prices, but at what cost? They just pass on the cost to ordinary users. Now it's becoming, we're up to our eyebrows how much you are spending on bundles. What I would have used maybe in 2 weeks, now you would use in about 3 days. And
the percentage increase and the timing are both devastating.
Well, any final words right before we go?
Daily Guide, front page story, Ghana card for car purchase soon, quoting His Excellency the Vice President, and he has already etched his name in history as the father of digitization, and I think it's progress. So we need to build on this progress to ensure that the benefits ripple in other sectors, in all sectors of the economy. So congrats, Dr. Baumia. I hope this will add fillip to your campaign to be the next president of the Republic of Ghana.
Well, congratulations to him. I guess we could call him Dr. Digital.
Yeah.
And that's how we cap off the news review this morning. Afil Moni, former president of the Ghana Journalists Association. Senior, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. We truly appreciate it. And this segment always brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. They are offering free prostate screening if you're a man, free fertility screening if you're a woman. Just reach out to them at any of their branches. Here in Accra at Spintex opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi, Kronom Abuehia behind the Angel Educational Complex, the Stakrade Anaji State, Tema Community 22, Tichiman Hanswa and Siaman Zima. Their call lines 0244 867 068 or 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. The end to chronic disease. And it brings us to the end of the news review. But up next, we serve you sports. There's been a lot of action. You don't want to miss that. Up next.